All right. I think we are live. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me,
Yeah,
Jade.
absolutely. So I want to start with you, Matt Willard.
hmm
The name Willard for generations. We know it. We know Cynthia Willard Lewis. We know Judge Ben Willard. Tell us what it means, one, to be a Willard,
hmm
and what do we need to know about you? A lot of people don't know you, and I want this to be the opportunity for you to use that platform for that.
The first thing I would say is what it means to be a Willard means to be one of many.
Yeah.
My dad is one of 12 kids. My grandfather, Dr. Elliott C. Willard, and his wife, my grandmother, Mary Jane Willard, had 12 kids,
Wow.
6 boys, 6 girls. So I have dozens of cousins. I have, lots of aunts, lots of uncles. So we're pretty deep,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But growing up in that family, my grandfather was a civil rights advocate, and him and my grandmother truly believed in the power of public education.
Mm.
So they mentored a lot of kids in the city of New Orleans, and I run into their former students and
Mm.
people who just touched their lives in such powerful ways. And so carrying on that name is very important because I feel like we've had a good reputation in the city as being true public servants.
Mm.
And, so I had, I guess, a different upbringing. My father
Mm.
used to drop me and my little brother off in neighborhoods with campaign literature and tell us to go knock on doors of strangers and ask them to vote for my auntie,
Mm.
right? I don't know how many kids had that experience growing up without parental supervision, by the way.
Yep.
And obviously, I saw the good when people would come up to my aunt Cynthia and just deeply appreciative of whatever she helped them with. But I also saw the bad when people
Mm.
came up to her and blamed her for whatever was going on in their lives. So for me, I'm a lifelong New Orleanian. I grew up in Gentilly. My mom retired as a public school educator,
Mm.
34 years. She used to be an UTNO member. Me and
Yeah.
my little brother Kyle used to do our homework during her UTNO meetings. And my father is a contractor, so I spent my summers working on his construction sites. And you know, I work for a tech company, and we used to be a startup. We were created in the physics department on Tulane's campus, and I ran for the legislature in 2019 because I didn't see enough initiative from our elected
Mm.
officials, especially as it relates to creating job opportunities for my generation,
Mhm.
exciting jobs that'll pay good wages, that'll keep our youth here in the city of New Orleans and in the state of Louisiana.
Mhm.
And so that was one of the main reasons I ran for the legislature 6 years ago.
Mhm.
And one of the ways I decided to address it was by creating the STEM Innovation Caucus, which has done a lot of matchmaking, but also put forward policy solutions to allow our entrepreneurs and our small business leaders in the state of Louisiana
Mhm.
to better succeed
Mhm.
and to create a better market for investors in the state of Louisiana.
Mhm. Mm. Why now? Why the council?
The council now, because it's way too difficult and it's way too expensive to live in the city of New Orleans.
Mm.
And for the last few years, I've really seen kind of a void as it relates to focusing on what are the most important things affecting our city right now.
Mhm.
And so as we ended 2024 and started to look at the municipal election cycle this year, which we're currently under, I just thought that I had a lot to offer to the city of New Orleans, right? I
Mhm.
find a lot of purpose serving in the legislature, and I've been able to do some really good work. I put an end to estimated water bills by Sewage and Water Board.
Mm.
I made sure that insurance companies gave premium reductions if people put a fortified roof on their property.
Mhm.
I made sure that the fortified roof grant program was a permanent program and that it was funded, sent home
Mhm.
tens of millions of dollars to the city of New Orleans.
Mhm.
I can make more of a direct impact for everybody in the city of New Orleans on the city council. And that's what caused me to hop into this race. I really believe that my demonstrated leadership, my ability to work well with everybody, and my ability to problem solve is what is needed in City Hall right now. And so that's why I decided to enter this race earlier this year.
Yeah. So there's an exodus of people leaving
Yeah,
New Orleans,
yeah.
right? And we've heard it. We've heard a lot of candidates talking about it. But I know that you have your own take on it and why it's happening. I want to hear that, but I also want to hear what you think are some of the solutions.
Yeah. So, part of the reason I think people are leaving, and we've seen this pattern for a few years now, it goes back to when we were in the COVID pandemic. So we know a lot of people left where they were living during COVID just because they thought it was a great opportunity to move. They've been thinking about moving, so they moved. Recently, I think we're still losing population because of a number of factors. It could be something as simple as somebody who's upset that we still have once a week trash pickup. It could be somebody who's still upset that when DPW came and replaced their street, they tore up their curb in their driveway and it's never been fixed. It could be somebody whose street light has been out for 2 years and it hasn't been touched, right? So what I say is there's not one thing that we can do to stop the population loss. Everything has to work together. We know that we're having trouble retaining our youth, especially recent college graduates, because many of them can't find the jobs here in the city of New Orleans. And so we have to, at a bare minimum, make sure that we're taking care of the basics first. So that means when we get funding for infrastructure, to do street work, to do sidewalk replacements, all of that stuff, that we do it correctly on time the first time. We're not doing double and triple the work. DPW and Sewage and Water Board are communicating with each other. We need to make sure that we're prioritizing things that are most important as it relates to quality of life issues. Why is the city saying they can't replace streetlights unless it's an emergency situation? That's not right. If your street light is out, that's an emergency to you. 6 years in the legislature, Jade, the city's never asked me for funding for streetlights. And then let's talk about our youth. Some of our NORD facilities throughout the city are great. Others don't have functioning bathrooms. We have NORD facilities where children go into and they don't have a bathroom that works. That's not right. I grew up in the NORD system. Your husband, Coach Donnie, was my 12-year-old baseball coach, right? And that was something. Our NORD facilities had programming. Even outside of sports year round, we have to get back to that model, and we have to invite the opportunity for our business community and some of our nonprofits to help us stretch our city dollars. And so you have to take care of those basics first. And I think once we do that, the population decline can subsidize and just kind of plateau. But in order to rebuild our population, we really need to create better job opportunities and better economy in the city of New Orleans. But if nothing else changes and we start creating jobs here, we'll still struggle with population loss because it's too difficult to live here.
What does that change look like for when you talk about wages, when you talk about job opportunities? Like what does that look like for us?
So for us, a lot of our jobs are related to the hospitality sector, right? And they don't pay the best wages. But if you talk to leaders in the hospitality industry, you know what they say? They don't want to be the only game in town because the more people with means who have higher disposable incomes, better supports their industries. If you have more people in New Orleans and you have more people making more money, that means you can afford more staycations, you can afford more date nights, you can afford more day outings on the weekend. So, a population with more money actually better supports the hospitality sector. So I think there's a couple of things that we need to focus on. The last few years, the city of New Orleans has kind of had a shotgun approach as it relates to economic development. What I mean by that is they chase any and all leads, even if it's not a strategic alignment. One example I cite is DXC. We all celebrated the arrival of DXC, but I guess nobody was discussing how the workforce that we had in the city of New Orleans weren't prepared to take on many of the jobs that DXC needed to hire for. So we need to have better communication with our university partners, our high school leaders, our business, our economic development partners, and our city leaders to make sure we can all get on the same page. But you also have to have economists looking at job forecasting. You know, a few weeks ago, I saw in the news that many college graduates who have computer science engineering degrees are struggling to get entry level jobs because a lot of those jobs have been replaced by artificial intelligence. And so we also have to make sure that we're not educating our kids for job opportunities that won't exist once they graduate, right? I think we have some opportunities. The tech sector, I work in it. I think New Orleans is a great place for tech companies to come because with a younger workforce, young families, New Orleans is still a very exciting place to be. There's so much stuff to do. So I think the tech sector is something that we can continue pushing for. But also, I believe that we have opportunities in the healthcare sector as well, especially as, you know, hopefully we can get close to redeveloping the Charity Hospital site. But right across from there on Canal Street, you have the Bioinnovation Center, you have University Medical Center, you have Tulane, you have LSU, who are doing great research as it relates to the biopharmaceutical industry. And interestingly enough, the U.S. up in Washington, D.C., Congress is actually looking to recapture some activity in the clinical trial space. I was on a panel with U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy, and the reason Congress has an interest in it is because China is out competing us. A lot of clinical trial activity is occurring in China now. The issue with that is a lot of research dollars follow clinical trial activity. And Louisiana, I think, is well positioned for clinical trial activity because we have a diverse population and we have a sickly population, unfortunately, a lot of comorbidities. So I think, you know, on the city council, in City Hall, you need strategic visionary leadership who can not only respond when something happens, but who can look forward to the future and have a vision on how we want New Orleans to look in the next decade.
Yeah. You talk about, and I know this about you, youth.
Yeah.
Not only your youth, but also you have a number one, a heart for youth, but you also have basically an agenda around how you're going to tap into youth. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't like to make policy decisions in isolation.
Yeah.
So yesterday I actually went to Ben Franklin. On my campaign, one of my interns as a junior at Ben Franklin, and she leads a civic engagement group at Ben Franklin. So she wanted me to come talk to her peers. And so I went and talked to them, and you know, they're not old enough to vote. I just went and spoke to them because they wanted to hear from an elected official. And I think that's amazing. So I think as we talk about what are the needs for youth in the city of New Orleans, we need to invite them to the table as well. I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago for this coalition of high school students throughout the city of New Orleans, and they've actually come up with a plan of how city leaders can help them in the city of New Orleans. And you know what's the biggest thing that they asked for? More places where they can meet up and hang out and do positive things. They're looking basically for social places. And it's not like when I was growing up, I forget, there was a club for teenagers.
Oh, yes.
Remember that?
What's the name of it? Oh, my God.
I'm blacking out on it.
I know, yeah.
That's not what they were asking for. They're like, hey, can we get places where we can talk about like video game programming and sound production and talk about politics? You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, this is the place.
Positive, right? Well, so I'll lean on you, right? But we need to create more positive opportunities for our youth, but we also need to understand the shortcomings that we have. The state legislature has been allocating additional funding for tutoring programming. But we have to understand many of our students in the city of New Orleans are dependent upon transportation to and from school. So if you have tutoring programming available outside of school hours at the school, many of the kids can't take advantage of it because they have to hop on that bus and go home. But what if we utilize NOR facilities for that, right? NOR facilities that are first class, that are all throughout the city of New Orleans, where our kids can go there and take advantage of those opportunities. So I firmly believe we need to create more positive environments for our youth to engage, like in person, not on a video game, not on the phone, like in person. And we need to have more peer-to-peer support services. A lot of it, and I try to mentor as many of our high school kids as we can.
Yeah.
A young man, Jonathan, from my church, told him several years ago about the legislative scholarship that we get for Tulane
Mhm.
University. And I
Mhm.
told him reach out to me when he got ready for college, make sure he applied to Tulane. And he
Mm,
did,
and
and
he
he was
did.
accepted. And my scholarship was allocated, but I was like, Jonathan, I'm going to figure it out. Like, you got in, you did what you were supposed to do. I'll make sure you get a scholarship.
Mhm.
And he did end up getting a
Wow.
scholarship. So he's
Wow.
at Tulane on a scholarship right now. So we have to reach out to the youth in the city of New Orleans, ask them what they need. What I've found is that a lot of our youth need help in soft skills. They need help in
Mm.
soft skills. And I think a lot of that can be traced back to the amount of time that they spend on their phones and on the video games. So creating positive environments for them to be successful, and also meeting them where they are. The city council's been doing a good job of putting more resources
Yeah.
into the school. The partnership with Thrive NOLA, I
Yeah.
think, is huge. Anything that we can do to put more counselors and mental health professionals in the school, because we have to acknowledge that a lot of our kids in the city of New Orleans are carrying around trauma
Trauma.
that no
Yeah.
no person in the world should
Yeah.
carry around
Yeah.
with them. And our kids are carrying that extreme trauma around,
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
have no outlet to deal with it, so they
Yeah.
keep it bottled up. So we have to meet them where they are. We have to reach out to them and make sure that they get the support that they need, both inside and outside of the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me shift a little bit. Let me talk about budget.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot about budget.
What's the deficit?
I don't know. You
I don't
tell
know
me
either.
70,
I don't
100,
know. I don't
150.
know. It's crazy.
You tell
It's
me.
crazy.
um, but listen, we've heard so much about budget, more so than I think we've ever heard, right? I think so many people in our communities, they are so focused on surviving in their own homes,
Hmm.
right? In their own worlds. Tell me what's your take on the budget and
I
how
think
you would want to approach that?
I think the reason the budget is under a magnifying glass right now is because, even outside of the deficit conversation, but it's really because people are unhappy with the services they're receiving from the city.
Hmm.
And if you take a look, do a 5-year look back on the city's budget, it's steadily increased.
Hmm.
Not too long ago, it was under $1 billion. Now it's over $1 billion, approaching $2 billion, right?
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
coming from taxpayers. So we're paying more into the city's coffers, but the services that we receive from the city have actually declined.
Hmm.
So we're paying more and we're receiving less. And I
Hmm.
think that's why there's a lot of attention to the budget right now,
Hmm.
because people in the city of New Orleans are saying, well, what the heck is going on with the money we send to the city?
Yeah.
What are you
Yeah.
actually doing with the money that we
Yeah.
send to the
Yeah.
city? So I think it's really unfortunate that we can't even pinpoint how much the deficit is.
Hmm.
The fact that we've heard 3 or 4 different numbers is kind of
Yeah.
unreal.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think the city should do starting next year is start to adopt a 3 to 5 year budget proposal.
Mm.
We do that in the state legislature. It's hard to plan and forecast if you're looking at year to year to year. I think we need to look out a little bit more.
Why have we never done that
I don't
before?
know. I
Yeah.
really don't know.
Yeah.
But to touch on the budget deficit issue, I can tell you, remember we had that special session last year dealing
Yeah.
with taxes.
Yeah. That's right.
And major changes were made to the tax code in the state of Louisiana,
Hmm.
and many of those changes affected municipal tax
Hmm.
collections.
Hmm.
And so I'm the chairperson of the House Democratic Caucus right now. So I'm
Hmm.
like the leader of Democrats in the House of Representatives.
Hmm.
So I've worked closely with the city. During that special session last fall, the city was coming to me a good bit, and they were saying, Matt, if this change goes through, the city is going to be missing out on $10 million in taxes.
Yeah.
If this change goes through, the city will be missing out on $15 million in taxes. And so my question is, or my concern is, we knew the potential implications to the city's revenue collections based on policy proposals last
Hmm.
year, because the city was giving me that information in real
Hmm.
time. Why did it take until
Now.
September of this year, I guess you could
Yeah.
say August of this year, for us to raise the alarm and say we're in a crisis right
Yep,
now.
yep.
And I know a lot of it is due to overtime spending as a result of the terrorist attack. Sometimes you can't really prepare for that. What you can do is get assurances, double
Yeah,
check, triple check
yeah,
that
yeah.
this expenditure is going to be fully reimbursable. I don't know if the city did that or not, but I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of the budget deficit is associated with overtime expenses during the following after the
Yeah.
terrorist attack. But they're also accounting for changes made at the state level, which took place last year.
Mm-hmm.
So we should have been proactive. We should have made budget adjustments earlier this year, knowing
Mm-hmm.
that those changes were coming.
Mm-hmm.
Some things that I think we can do to right size the ship is right now we don't have enough people working directly in City Hall toward road maintenance and to
Mm.
replacing street lights and red lights in the city of New Orleans,
Yeah.
but we contract out a lot of work. When you contract work out, you're spending more and you lose that accountability because you're dealing with a third party. You're dealing with a contractor. To make it worse, a lot of those contractors stop the work when they don't get paid.
Yeah, that's
So they
right.
may do half of the project and then it may sit for a period of time, sometimes a
And
long
we see
period
it.
of time,
Mm-hmm.
because they're waiting to get paid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one thing that we can do to increase accountability and transparency and potentially save us money is to bring some of those jobs underneath City Hall and contract out less of that work. We
Mm-hmm.
actually have to start looking at ways that we can do more with less. One thing that I would like to explore is leveraging some software and automation technologies within some of the departments in City Hall and see if that could actually have cost savings too. Not to replace people, but to do a resource allocation to where maybe they can work on some other stuff. I
Yeah.
spoke to a lady who works in safety and permits, which really needs a lot of
Yeah.
attention and a transformation. She says she works by herself, but there should be at least 4 people doing the work that she does,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so there's a backlog there. So we have to have problem solving. We have to think
Yeah.
outside of the box, and we have to look at ways that technology can allow us to be more effective and more efficient and do more with less.
So you just talked about bringing in more jobs,
Yep.
right? Are you ready for civil service? Is civil service prepared to, ramp up that kind of undertaking? That's my first question. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think also, um, I don't disagree with you in terms of workforce, but I also feel like, um, we haven't necessarily given the tools to the people who are in the building right
Yeah.
now, right? I think it's both of those things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity to be at Sewage and Water Board as
Yeah.
an example,
I know.
and you know the lack of innovation, like you said, the lack of technology, and just progress. It is really, really like stifling us as
Mm-hmm.
a city. And so I'm looking forward to those kinds of initiatives from you. Here's my question. Um, when it comes to the budget, and transparency, I've heard a lot about that, around transparency from you directly. You talked about some of the automation and some of you talk about
The
dashboards.
dashboards,
Give
yeah.
us a little bit more about that.
So as it relates to transparency on the budget, one thing that I think we need to do as city council members is make sure that we go into the community. As we're working on that budget, we have to say, this is what we're preparing to put forward as the city's budget. These are the areas that we're going to focus on based on all the feedback that we received this year, all the polling information that's telling the city to focus on city services, infrastructure, opportunities for our youth, sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
right? All of those things. This is what we're looking at for the budget, and what's your take on it? Like, we have to go into the
Mm-hmm.
community and we have to make sure that after the budget is passed, that we're good stewards with that money, meaning that when DPW comes before us, we have to figure out, hey, we allocated you this much money for trucks to do catch basin cleanings. Have
Mm-hmm.
those been procured? If
Mm-hmm.
not, why not?
Mm-hmm.
What do we need to do to make sure you can get those trucks? You
Mm-hmm.
have those trucks now. where are you at on the 500 catch basins that you said you would clean out this quarter, right?
Mhm.
Are we at the market? Are we at the target? Are we not at the target? If we're not, why? Like
Mhm.
we have, it's a dynamic process that has to occur throughout the year so that we don't have last minute things come
Mhm.
up, right?
Mhm.
Like we're experiencing right now.
Mhm.
And so when I talk about transparency, I'm talking about getting into the community and
Yeah.
having a dialogue about how we're going to spend your dollars,
Mhm.
because the money that funds the city's budget comes from the people of New Orleans. It comes from visitors as well, but our property taxes, the
Mhm.
millages, the sales taxes. I
Mhm.
think we need to have a dynamic dialogue about that process, but also with the understanding that this is something that has to happen year round. We have to
Mm.
have all those departments come before the city council and just, hey, where are we at with the money you received for this budget? And is there anything that we need to do to fix it? I'll never forget, the city council gave DPW a bunch of money. I think it was DPW at the time, to clean catch basins,
Mhm. Mhm.
and they didn't use it, right?
Mhm.
They couldn't use it, and their response was, well, we don't have enough of the trucks to clean the catch basins. And
Mhm.
so the question is, why didn't we ask for
Why
money
didn't
for
we know
trucks instead of
that?
cleaning the catch basins,
Yeah.
right? And so I think when you have those conversations year round and
Yeah.
focus on the really big stuff year round as opposed to just during the budget process,
Mhm.
you increase that
Mm.
transparency by a multitude of factors.
Mhm.
And I think that's when people say we want to know what's going on with the city's budget. I think that's more along the lines of
Mhm.
what they're talking about.
Mhm. I heard you a couple of weeks ago talk about going in and doing an audit
Hmm.
and like basically an assessment
Yeah.
of the city. What do you like? Tell me more about that, and why do you think that that's necessary? And what does it include,
Well,
or what would it include?
so what I would say on the audit piece right now, I really talk. I think what you're talking about was an audit related to Nord, but there are like safety and permits. I would like to
Mhm.
see where they are. DPW, I would
Mhm.
like to see where they are. The thing that's very important right now is a lot of people in the city don't have faith in City Hall.
Mhm.
They don't have trust in City Hall. And
Mhm.
I think as we move into 2026 and you get a new mayor and you get at a minimum 3 new council members, we have to do everything that we can as fast as we can to
Mhm.
start to regain that trust and that faith in our local leaders. And I
Mhm.
do believe having an audit on many of the city's departments would go a
Mhm.
long way,
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
see how the money has been spent and how it was supposed to be spent, but also to figure out what the shortcomings are,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
One reason a lot of work was able to be done in such a short period of time during the Super Bowl is because we had people bringing department heads together, and they
Mhm.
were able to problem solve and remove roadblocks in real time. And
Mhm.
so shortly after this election, I feel good about it. Shortly after this election, what my plan is to kind of wrap up things in the state legislature,
Mhm.
and then start meeting with department heads and
Yeah.
actually, the everyday people working in the departments inside of City Hall to figure out what the issues are so that
Mhm.
we can have a plan of attack as soon as the new council and the new mayor is seated next year. But I think those audits are part of that transparency
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Like we need to know what's been accounted for. Has the
Mhm.
money been actually utilized? Make sure there's no funny business going on
Mhm.
as well, right?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think that will help to regain some of the trust that the city of New Orleans has in City Hall.
Yeah. And I hear people feel like audits and those kinds of assessments are taboo. I don't approach it like that. Because I think to your point, we've got to understand what we're dealing
What
with,
we're dealing with, yeah.
right? And that's the only way that we can actually respond.
Yeah, and look, personally, I think a lot of times audit is thrown out there as
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
response of I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's been a tough few years for us in the city of New Orleans, and we know that a large population of our city really doesn't trust City Hall right
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
so, if we're going to talk about transparency, we need to actually do things to improve transparency. And I
Mhm.
think a few targeted audits, a few targeted audits, working with department heads and everything, to
Mhm.
just figure out where we are, what are the problems, and to make sure again that no funny business has
Yeah.
been going on
Yeah.
would be a good step in the right
Yeah.
direction.
Two things. One, and then I think we're almost close to time, but um, people, right? I've often said that, we put a lot of money, we put a lot of investments in systems
Mhm.
and equipment in the
Mhm.
city. You just
Mhm.
talked about, catch basins and the like, right? What I don't see, and I just want your take on this, we have not really invested in people, right? Whether it is a sewage and water board or RTA or right, like, and when I say people, like we have individuals that have been doing a specific job the same for the last 20, 30 years, right?
Mhm.
And you talk about innovation, right? But we don't really do a great job at supporting and investing in people. How do you approach that as a city council member?
Well, what I would say is, for anybody doing their job, they're going to do it the same way unless they have a reason not to do it the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of that deals with management.
Mm-hmm.
For the tech company I worked for a few years ago, we started having conversations about how we can leverage artificial intelligence to make
Mm-hmm.
our jobs to be more efficient at our
Mm-hmm.
jobs. And we basically put forward guidance on how you can use AI and how you can't use AI.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like an expectation of us to utilize artificial intelligence
Mm-hmm.
for us to do more with less.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of it deals with management
Mm-hmm.
in culture. We need to have people talking about how we can do things differently, not for the sake of just doing it different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for the sake of having cost savings, being able to be more efficient. Like, imagine something simple as, when somebody reaches out to my office about a local issue. It could be a clogged catch basin, it could be a
Mm-hmm.
street light that's out. They're reaching out to me because they reached out to the city and they
And
haven't
then got it.
received a resolution, and
Mm-hmm.
in many cases never even received a response, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we should be able to have software that tracks that email, puts it into a database, and then starts tracking it in real
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And management should be able to pull that dashboard up and say, hey, Jade, I see on your list you had 50 streetlights that are out this week,
Mm-hmm.
and you haven't responded to any of these emails. What's
Mm-hmm.
going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we need that hands-on presence in City Hall. We need that proactive management as opposed to just being reactive,
Mm-hmm.
right? We
Mm-hmm.
can be visionary with what we want to do. Investments in people also means investments in systems and softwares and
Mm-hmm.
processes,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But investments in people also means management taking the time to dedicate with their employees to say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, how can I help you be better at your job? Is there anything that you want to gain experience in? Is there anything that, you know, our department can do to help you grow professionally,
Mm-hmm.
right? For me, that's what investing in people actually means, and rewarding good behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are falling
Mm-hmm.
short, putting them on an improvement plan,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think, hopefully, nobody wants to be holding the department back. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to move everything forward.
Yeah.
And so I think you can't do that if you're not tracking those outcomes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if somebody's falling short, there needs to be a plan put in place to help them do better,
Yeah.
and not necessarily a punitive measure, just to help you professionally, to help you as an individual. Let's move forward on this and see if we can get you to, become one of the strongest team members we have.
Yeah.
So you have to have that environment. Like, we
Yeah.
are a team that's committed to improving the quality of life for people in the city of New Orleans. In absence of leadership, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
And so you actually have to have leadership in there who's encouraging that type of attitude, that type of environment, but also talking to them on a regular basis. Say,
Yeah.
how's your team doing? Is there anything that I can do to help you help your team?
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about leadership. Last night we saw a letter from the governor
Yeah.
on the National Guard.
Mm-hmm.
And you've had the opportunity to work in Baton Rouge and really have to fight You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What does that look like for New Orleans? What does
The National Guard.
yeah, well, that, but also how does leadership in the city of New Orleans approach it? How do we protect our people, our city? What's your take on that?
So I think one of the best things that we can do to get help from the state legislature in ways that we want to get help requires real planning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easier to go to the state legislature and say, here's our 10-year plan on how we're going to um, tackle drainage in the city of New Orleans. We've identified $50 million in city resources to do that. We've identified a potential 50 million in federal grants to help us do that. And we're asking the state to step in and give us another 50 so we can make this plan a reality. You have to have something strategic. I think one thing that has worked against us is when we go to Baton Rouge, a lot of the requests are kind of piecemeal instead of having like a long-term strategic plan on how we're going to change things. And I think when we can go up there, it's really about relationships. So although I'm the chairperson of the House Democratic Caucus, I have great relationships in Baton Rouge with the Speaker of the House, with the President of the Senate. The New Orleans delegation is strong. They can bring home the bacon for us in many aspects. What we've been missing the last few years is kind of a champion from the city side. City council members have stepped up to do what they can. But what I'll tell you, Jade, is when I first got into the legislature, we used to have before session a big meeting with the mayor, with department heads, with NOPD, with the health department, Dr. Avegno. We haven't had that meeting in about 3 years.
Yeah.
We haven't had that meeting in about 3 years. And so it's hard to work with the city and prioritize what the city needs if you're not even having those meetings. And so I think we have to have a reset, and we have to really work hard at our relationships in Baton Rouge. We have to understand that we have to allow the New Orleans delegation to do what they think is in the best interest of the city and not kind of stonewall them, right? Because it's a very tricky place up there. And you have to be very cognizant of your relationships. Everything that you do as a state legislator can either help or hurt the city. And we have to understand that I think the New Orleans delegation knows what's best for the city of New Orleans. So we need to rebuild that partnership. Also, I think, with this new cycle of elections and a new mayor coming in and at least 3 new council members coming in, that there is a better opportunity to start fresh with the state legislature. I think a big problem is that they haven't had much faith in the leadership that has been in City Hall. And so I think as we get a new slate next year, we go up there and we say, this is our approach to moving the city forward in the right direction. This is how we think the state legislature can actually help us accomplish these goals. We'd love to be a partner as opposed to an adversary, and go from there.
Yeah. So when we talk about and because I think all of that is solid, and I agree. When we hear things, and I'm just using the National Guard thing as just as an example, we've seen other things. Is it a distraction or is it
No, it's real.
Okay, so tell me what you think about
No, it's real. And unfortunately, over the last couple of years, the legislature's moved more to the congressional model, where we're taking on, different things that are happening in DC as opposed to really focusing on solving problems for people who live in the state of Louisiana. The National Guard, to me, is an example. If the federal government and the governor really want to help the city of New Orleans, let's sit down and have a conversation about how you can help us with our infrastructure, about how you can help us create positive opportunities for our youth, about how you can help us fund early childhood education, which is one of the best investments that we can make with taxpayer dollars, right? So there's a lot of ways that we can get help from from the president, from the federal government, and from Governor Landry. I don't think that spending millions of dollars on National Guard is the right answer. I think one thing that could help is giving us more support to boost up our NOPD force. We have a shortage of officers. Not exactly sure how short it is because, again, that's not a science on how many,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
NOPD officers we have, but if they can help us create better recruitment and
Mm-hmm.
retention programs, if there's something that they can do to help make it easier for first responders to become homeowners in the city of New Orleans, if there's something that can make it easier for our teachers to become homeowners in the city of New Orleans,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to help us move in the right direction. As it relates to law enforcement, anything that we can do there, if you make it easier for them and more affordable for them to call New Orleans home, that's going to make it easier for us to recruit and retain officers
Mm-hmm.
in the city of New Orleans,
Mm-hmm.
which is really what we want. We don't want a temporary thing like National Guard and having a military presence in the city of New Orleans. But what we do want is for Chief Kirkpatrick to have the resources that she thinks she needs to best
Mm-hmm.
protect and serve the city of New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you need from the city? What do you need from the people?
Yeah,
What do you need?
I need their vote.
Yeah.
Early voting's still going on. This Saturday is going to be the last day of early voting. Election day is next Saturday, October 11th. Encouraged by the turnout. You know,
Yeah. That was awesome.
we've had more than 20,000 people already vote based on. I think we had about 10,000 people early vote Saturday. I think we had close to 10,000 submit their mail-in ballots already.
Yeah.
So we're looking good as it relates to turnout. Just keep in mind, this is a critical election cycle.
Yeah.
New mayor, at least 3 new council members. I'm very optimistic about the future of our city, but
Yeah.
in order for us to really put ourselves in the best position to succeed, we need to get Matthew Willard on the city council in this council member at large Division 1 spot. You know,
Yeah.
I'm ballot number 30. And on social media, I'm Willard for NOLA. My website is matthewwillard.com. Only person in my race with the policy platform on their website, because again, I believe in transparency. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be held accountable by the people of New Orleans because that's the way government should work. So please make a plan to go vote, get it out of the way, go vote early before Sunday. Last day to early vote is Saturday, but you can do it every day this week. Exercise your right to vote because you have a say in the future of the city of New Orleans.
That's it. All
And
right.
thank you, Jade. Thank you for putting this
No,
together. This
thank
was
you.
awesome.
Appreciate it.